No, is that you've got a brand new BBC One drama called Exile, which we'll talk about in a little while.
Yes. On to real-life drama now, and with the news last week that US is flying unmanned military aircraft over Libya, the day when warfare is completely carried out by robots got a step closer.
Yeah, well, when that day will come is unclear, but British companies are creating the technology that will eventually make it happen. Ex-RAF navigator John Nichol travels to Preston to meet the machines that could make human pilots obsolete.
I'm just outside an airbase near Preston. It's the location for a sensitive Ministry of Defence project costing millions of pounds. In fact, the project's so sensitive that its very existence wasn't known until 2006. But today, I've got permission to go inside and take a look. And this is what I've come to see. This is the Mantis, an unmanned aerial vehicle developed by BAE Systems at a cost of £12 million. It can fly up to 55,000 feet, it can remain airborne for 24 hours and carry a range of weapons. But that in itself isn't new. The Americans have already developed a couple of similar aircraft. They're operating over Afghanistan and Libya right now. The Predator and Reaper have been successfully taking out many enemy positions. So how is the Mantis different from the current generation of unmanned aircraft like Predator?
This system is set up to fly itself. You don't actually need a pilot to actually manually fly the vehicle in the same way as on a Predator. You actually have a pilot on the ground with a joystick manually flying the vehicle.
So can it think for itself?
It is autonomous in the sense that it will react to changes in its environment to do different things, but they're against a set of pre-programmed constraints and against a set of pre-programmed eventualities that it might undertake.
So the Mantis is an armed, intelligent, flying robot. And if you're thinking this sounds like something out of James Cameron's 1984 film Terminator, you're not alone. Are we in danger of having robots that can think for themselves?
It hasn't got an artificial brain in there. It has a set of rules that it operates to. You know, the way this technology works is that it would just come home and land if it lost its communications for any length of time, etc.
Obviously there's a big military aspect to this, but it's got incredible surveillance capabilities. But presumably somebody like a police force could use it for surveillance as well.
The thing about the autonomous systems and their persistent capabilities, they give you the ability to address some of the issues that you can't address today around maritime surveillance, for example. You know, going out searching the oceans to rescue people, border patrol, illegal immigrants, issues around smuggling, that sort of thing. So it can be used in law enforcement, but you've got to have the right rules and constraints in place to make sure they're doing the right thing.
This new technology raises many moral and ethical questions.
Having drones survey us from the air 10,000 feet and we can't even see them might seem very similar to having CCTV cameras, which are all over the city centre. But at least you know when you're going into the city centre that you're being filmed. But at 10,000 feet, especially against the sun, it could be looking in your bedroom window and getting high resolution film. In fact, it's just like CCTV, except it sees everything everywhere at all times.
It doesn't take the human out of the loop. The human is there on the ground commanding the system. So you've got the opportunity to give him the right information, to put people around him to help him make the right sort of decisions, which if he was a pilot on board by himself, he's got to do that all by himself.
I loved my 16 years flying in the Air Force, but technology like this was way beyond anything that we could have ever imagined. And look at this. What does this say to today's youngsters with a dream of flying in the future?
Professor Noble Sharkey, who we saw in the film, joins us now. Welcome.
Hello.
Now, where do you think then the limit is for this military technology?
Well, there are real problems with it because there's a kind of mantra saying there'll always be a person in the loop. Whereas in actual fact, they're building these autonomous systems because they can lose radio control. And so the problem is that they can't discriminate between an insurgent, say, and a civilian or even a child. So they have real difficulty with targets, and yet the idea ultimately is to go and select their own targets and to kill them. And that's what the mantra that keeps coming up in all of the US plans that I've read, and many, many I've read.
Yeah. And how far away can they be controlled from? I mean, thinking about, if you're flying a remote-controlled aeroplane.
Well, at the moment, the ones being flown in Pakistan, for instance, are being flown from Creech Air Force Base in the Nevada desert, so 7,000 miles. There's a cable under the ocean, comes to Europe, gets beamed up to satellite, and then flicks down to a radio station. Right. But the link takes about 2 seconds. That's another problem, because that means when you pull the lever, it takes 2 seconds for it to respond, and so that's another reason for going in this route of making them work completely on their own.
I see, yeah.
And the police force are expressing some interest in this technology. You talked about surveillance in the film there, but how else could they use this technology then?
Well, I think it would only be surveillance. I don't think they're going to put any weapons on them yet. Although the American police have got ground robots with tasers on them now. But I don't think we'll use tasers from the sky. But I think that the problem for the police is that you've got this idea that they can just sit there. Persistence is what they talk about in the video. So you can sit there for 24 hours. And The Guardian used freedom of information to get minutes of meetings. And they say it's for terrorism. But it turns out that 5 British police forces, BAE Systems and the Home Office are planning things like antisocial driving, antisocial behaviour, fly posting, fly tipping, a whole range of fairly trivial offences.
How about robots, like sort of around the house, if you like? Are you quite surprised that that hasn't developed any further?
Well, we were all surprised that it didn't come in the 70s. That's when it was supposed to come. But it's sort of getting there now. I mean, the big hold-up was that we didn't have good vision systems. That's the reason why you can't tell the difference between terrorists and non-terrorists. But we didn't have very good vision systems, so we had to go for these things. In the 80s, we suddenly thought, well, let's look at insects instead of humans. And we used fast-acting sensors connected directly to motors. So now we have vacuum cleaners, we have window cleaners, we have pool cleaners, we have all sorts of cleaners. But medicine's the big area where they're going to be most useful, I would say.
Absolutely.
Lovely.
Well,
Thank you so much.
Stuff. We talk for hours on this.
Yeah, we could.
Amazing. But thank you. We haven't got time for that. Now then, most people up and down the country